We can attribute the extra week to the temporal clusterfuck that is daylight savings psyop.
Well, it's actually more just because of my travels, but let's blame it on that. Like, I like that. That's a good one.
I like my version's way more poetic.
I like it. And it is the biggest, it's kind of like the most low-hanging fruit, obvious thing that nobody really thinks about when we're talking about these bigger issues of how we're being like fooled and fucked and like having our reality augmented. And if you think about it, like I would be curious to go back and look at the arc of my work and see if like I'm on the hot trail of something for a period of time. And at the time it sort of loses its potency as somewhere around daylight savings time, almost like, they're about to open that portal, or that one's become so obvious we can't hide it anymore. Got to shift it, right? It's kind of like, have you ever had days like when your GPS doesn't work either?
Yes.
Right? Like it's like that almost, right? Like there's some shifting or changing, some updating that's happening so that people don't realize that like they moved the town a mile to the west or something like that, right? Yeah.
So I've talked about, and I write about it in my new book, Fragmentation, and how fragmentation is one of the weapons of hierarchy and the social engineers. So Robert Forti edited my book. He sent me back like this big notebook with all his handwritten notes. And he's saying that David Bohm talked about this in Wholeness in the Implicate Order. I'm so sad. I left all my David Bohm books back in LA, so they're all gone. But now I'm diving back into Bohm, how fragmentation is just such a weapon of control, because you get flow going, you get momentum going, and then fragmentation comes in and is like, it's like a needle skipping on a record, or like a speed bump in the road that just like disrupts. And that is absolutely what daylight savings time is.
So have you read Synchronicity by F. David Pete? Because he refers to that stuff, Bohm stuff, a lot in his book. They were good friends, and Bohm figures heavily into Pete's ideas about synchronicity, right?
How do you spell Pete?
F. David Pete, Peat. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's a really good book. And it really, like, that was the book we were really into when Michael and I were first getting going in Project Kids, before Glass Bead Game kind of thing happened, right? Yes, right? So the couple of things, I read this interesting article last week, because every time that we're getting to close to elections, this topic comes up again, because it's actually the thing that most people agree about. So it's like, why can't it get passed? Right? Like everybody, this is not a partisan issue. This is one thing that could unite everybody, right? But the article is basically like, don't get too mad about the fact that Congress doesn't seem to be able to pass this, because even if it did pass, that would just start now the argument about whether we go to standard time or daylight time. And there's a huge divide there. I don't know if the huge divide is political or partisan that way, but there's a huge divide between scientists and economists on that one. So you know that then the left will go with the scientists and the right will go with the economists, or whatever kind of bullshit. And the divide is over, like, the daylight savings time would be better for the economy because it would stay light, darker, and people spend more money later in the day. And so, right, like that, they spend more money in later in the day when it stays lighter. And the scientists say that it's better for your circadian rhythm to get sleepy earlier, and darkness makes you tired earlier.
That's the winner. Like, humanity versus the economy. Why is this even a conversation? One thing serves the human health and our physiology, and the other thing serves what? Okay. The IMF, the World Bank, and
this is the argument between experts. They're not even considering what the people think. Now, for me, I agree with you. I agree with you. Humanity should win. But for me, I personally feel better during daylight savings time. So I would rather have it stay late longer all year round. For me, personally, it isn't a political thing or a
daylight longer. What does that mean?
Daylight longer is daylight savings time. Dark earlier is standard time.
Yeah, I like standard time.
Okay, so I like that makes sense. You and I like for all the things we have in common, we have some things that are different, and that's one of them, right? So I can see where this could become like an actual argument, but they're not even deferring to what people like. They're just going,
hey, superstars, I'm interrupting our current programming to remind you to click that subscribe button, to like, to share, to comment. Your comments go a long way in convincing the algorithm to give me more reach. As well, I am inviting you to click that bell so that you'll be notified every time I post an awesome video. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
people like, they're just going, well, some scientists say this and economists say that. So it's always either the scientism or the economics, right? Now, there's probably like, you know, this gets into like weird shit, right? Does the world all need to be in unison? Or is it okay for states to have different things, right?
Talk about fragmentation. If we can't agree on a measurement of our temporal moments,
Right.
that's create even more chaos, which, as you say that will probably be their next op.
Right.
To create more chaos.
All right. And they won't pay us for this one either, for bringing this, right. But okay, but here's the thing. I completely agree with you about, like, I'm totally against deferring to the expert class for anything at this point,
right?
Because I'm just over that shit. But how do we resolve the difference between you and I? Because we're both humans, and we're both saying what we're saying because you feel better when it's standard time, and I'm saying it. How do we do that?
Honest, like, I'm not that attached to the one or the other. Pick one. I don't even care what it is, and that's what it is, and stop changing it.
Right. Okay.
That would be my preference. For me, it doesn't make sense as it's getting colder and darker to have less daylight. That just does not make any sense to me.
Right. But it also feels weird then in the summer when it is warm outside and still 90 for it to be dark. Right. So it's the same. It's the reversible jacket again, right? Everything's a goddamn reversible jacket. Right?
Light in the summer. So it's like there's already more light. So I feel like like I said, I don't even feel that attached to one or the other. Just freaking pick one.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I understand, and I mostly like agree with that. But yes, when they run out of like all of these other issues, they'll go to that one.
Completely.
But yeah, I think so much of the shenanigans, if you see it one way, or the opportunities, if you see it another way, are dependent on coordinates, and coordinates are not just spatial, they're also temporal. But the most complicated coordinates, and the ones that are the most meaningful, include both temporal and spatial aspects. And so fucking with the time fucks everything up.
Completely. And I love that you just said opportunity, because I coined a new word that I launched in my last minute podcast with Michael Wan, psi opportunity. Yeah. Every psyop is an opportunity. And I think it's wise for those of us who are attuned to psyops to start thinking of them in this way and see how they can benefit us.
I had a great show last night with Benjamin Balderson and SB Alger. Do you know either of them? Mm-mm. Okay. So
Alger sounds familiar.
So Alger, he used to have a show called RX Picture Show, that the same Tracy that Robert didn't want to say her last name last time used to be on a lot, right? And so that's how a lot of people know him. But he also is one of the panel on weaving spiders. Okay. And then Benjamin is his channel is Odin's Alchemy. He's into spagyrics and lab alchemy and all of that kind of stuff. And he's really cool. So I was supposed to do a show with SB and Jim, who was his co-host on RX Picture Show, but Jim at the last minute decided to get married. And so that I can understand not wanting to spend the first night of your honeymoon with yours truly if you're not married to me, right? So huh?
Do you need a green card? Why are people still doing that?
I think they didn't do it the legal way. They did it like a very spiritual kind of thing.
Okay.
They did a very traditional, interesting thing that I'd never heard of before. That was kind of fascinating. So congratulations to you, Jim and wife. Congratulations. But so Ben stood in for Jim, and so all hilarity ensued, right? It was kind of a different toned show, but we got into like a pretty lengthy discussion about similar idea to what you're talking about, right? just in terms of not like how vulnerable even those of us who think we have it all figured out are to certain kinds of cognitive infiltration or paralleling. We were talking about this idea of parallel construction and paralleling, and you come up with an idea that's almost exactly the truth, but just like with one distortion that is really sexy off, and that people go for that distortion. And so our ability to not be swayed by things that are sexy is the opportunity with every PSYOP.